Shane was with us for many years before, and actually, fun fact, Shane was an experience provider for me during my internship at Mercer. So I'm really excited to have Shane back because he's fabulous. And then we also have Glenn Boyd coming back at a fractional FT. He's still in his Bridges transition program, but back as a psych for point 2. And we're going to try to make it look really good. And
he's already got questions like, why aren't you guys doing this? I'm like, I don't know. Why aren't we?
So we just, do either of you want to say anything? Shane, maybe you want to say something?
That's pretty obvious. Everybody can't recognize some of you folks, and then I know all the new people. So thank you guys.
Yeah. And Glenn, you want to say anything?
I'm so glad to be back.
We're so glad to have you.
He's been Skyping into our staff meetings from upstairs anyway.
So welcome back, you two. Thanks for joining us. Get a round of applause for Shane and Glenn. And that's it for me.
Okay.
I think Spencer's up next.
Spencer is up next. So just so everybody knows, both Dr. Wood and Dr. Sue are pretty sick, unfortunately. So you're stuck with Michelle and I today.
Yeah.
So ha ha ha.
You're up next.
I'm up next. So, just a reminder around compliance support. Oh, stand over here.
That way you're in sight of the...
All right. So, just a reminder around compliance support. And this is pretty short. 2 things. One is, I want to remind us around like what the intent of compliance support was, and then how we're then deploying it right now. So the initial intent was one, if you recall a couple years ago, we had some problems with building coverages when people were out on leaves or when different things occurred, right? So that was kind of the initial impetus to put in support so that we don't have a situation mid-year where we just have a building that's completely left uncovered. And then we also said, in addition to that, we want to try to support and provide relief for individuals who are clearly suddenly had something happen, right? Like you either have, and as we've gone over time, we've refined some of the language around that. So individuals who had a conflict of interest around a case, or when you have a really, really high evaluation caseload for, a given span of time, right? But in terms of, we never had an instance where suddenly we couldn't provide that support, but we're running into it during this month. And what that means is that we're prioritizing things for the first time we need to provide basic building coverage, and that takes precedence over everything else, right? So we have an open building, we're deploying compliance support out to those buildings so that we at least fulfill the contractual component of building coverage. And then second to that, then we're trying to address individual caseload relief concerns. So note that we're not saying no to everybody because just saying like, hey, we're not going to try to help you if you are getting overloaded, but we are also targeting basic support and function at a building before we get to people's individual cases, if that makes sense. I guess any questions around that? So we do anticipate it will get better because we do have some relief on the horizon coming up, coming prospectively next month. But I can't promise you how long. Obviously, there's a time period to get people, if we bring contractors in, up to speed, et cetera, et cetera. So we're doing our best.
Also anticipate other emergencies that are unforeseen that will occur.
Exactly. So the good part is buildings are covered right now. So I guess that's a good thing compared to some past years. That's all.
So all of these are things that Dr. Wood was going to talk about, so I don't really even know what he was going to say, so I'm just going to make it up. So he had on here to talk about the protocol for turning in protocols, which was communicated in this week's weekly psych report. Did anybody have questions about that? Oh, good. Yes. The answer is 4.
I noticed for the first time that somebody said put the student's number on the protocol, and I had never noticed that before. So is that something we knew, or?
No, that's something that Jennifer and I were just joking about, because I don't do it because the protocol doesn't have a space that asks me for the kid's ID number, and I'm a rule follower and fill out all the things it asks me for. That is because we have many students with many exactly the same names and similar names, and
So they would like.
or if you misspell the kid's name, which happens more than you would believe, or if you don't, so we want to go with the legal name. Again, we got to go back to the intent. The intent is to ensure that this part of their educational record is available in their educational record. So we want to do everything we can to prevent it from ending up in the wrong kid's educational record. So yeah, making sure you have their full legal name, not initials or what their nickname is, and their student ID number.
So to provide the context, because some people might not have even been downtown, like in the records room, but we have a records room where compliance used to physically make a file for every student who qualifies for special ed. And then, the IEP teachers turn in the IEPs. We used to turn in the hard copy of the evaluations, so they're keeping it in the physical folder. They're not getting rid of the files that already exist in the records department, but they're also not creating new ones now that we're paperless. But now that we're turning in our protocols, they do have to create new files because those protocols have to go somewhere. Otherwise, they're just like in a huge box, right? So if we're just writing names and our handwriting's kind of messy or we're misspelling it, they're not going to be able to find those students in order to make the actual physical compliance file. That's why they're asking that group your protocols together by student, write the student ID on the front of that packet when you turn it in. It's just to make life easier for everybody, but life is tough for us.
Since you scan everything and then shred it, just to help mechanic, what I do now is just rip off the corner of the file that has the student's name and ID, and take it to the main protocols.
That's pretty genius. Yeah.
So you don't actually have to
Yeah.
write it.
There's no right or wrong way to do it, just as long as the ID is on there.
And that's something
And you don't have to make a new form.
Yeah.
If
If you- Yeah. So what he's saying, if you printed out the report for your meeting and then you're gonna shred that report afterwards, just tear off
Cut
the
the
corner
square.
where it has the student name and ID and attach it to your protocol.
I like that idea.
And have
Yeah.
Yes.
So what date was that starting when we're turning in the protocol?
I don't have the date memorized off the top of my head. You are not expected to go back in time. So I believe it's been approximately 2 weeks since the official notification came out. So, I mean, nobody's going to say, ooh, you had that meeting on Tuesday and we told you on Wednesday kind of thing. So,
Yeah, I don't think there's going to be any sort of compliance check on this, on when people are turning them, when they started, if you turn in your backlog or not. It's just kind of from here on out, we have the opportunity to send them downtown.
So this will not be a check mark on IEP online.
Hopefully not.
no check marks.
So I could actually bring all of them that I have from the beginning of the year.
You can.
You
but
could.
need to
You-
group them by student and put their ID.
Yeah.
Sure.
You wouldn't be the first one.
Okay.
I had to run get Dr. Wood the first time somebody brought their wagon. Because I was like, I knew it was a-coming.
Yeah.
Yes, Miss Carrie Ann.
So you can't wait to do that every year? You do it as a
So there has not been explicitly a deadline given that you have to do it within 48 hours. But again, like positive intent, do you want to do that to a classified staff member to where they get to shelve like 3,000 of them that week that is the last week of school when everybody's turn? I mean,
No.
Right. So
reasonableness.
we all need to think about the impact that we have on the people that are supporting us. So that's why it takes us an extra minute to write down the ID number, but it saves a lot of time on the other end. Saves people a lot of time if we're turning them in small chunks along the way rather than a huge box at the end of the year.
Mhm.
Yes. Which, any other questions on that? That bleeds into the next part.
Yeah.
Because again, yes,
Are the school ones? Yes.
educational records are educational records, so yeah. Again, unfortunately, Rochelle has left us.
Yeah, does everybody know that Rochelle Fields?
Has retired, and
Retired.
she's moved down to Texas to be with her family, which is really great for her, really not great for us. And they are in the process of interviewing her replacement. So, well, they've asked people to be on the interview team, I guess. So yes. Oh, you didn't?
No, I didn't get it. But
Ask me to do it. Okay. So that is forthcoming, but of course, that team of staff has to cover Rochelle's job in the interim, which is what prompted Ronnie to ask us to do our own reeval notices for May. This is again just saying it in a different way. We've already told you in other ways. Ronnie approached Michelle and I this morning and specifically did not ask us to remind you, but asked us to thank you for doing it. So she's recognizing that you're already taking care of it and knows she can trust you to be on top of it. And as she said, if you need some of the procedural safeguards or the parent interview things, that she has all those materials that you can go to her and she can help you out with that.
Mm-hmm.
Any questions about that? Sweet. Okay. Did everybody receive and read the email from HR yesterday?
Yes, it's fabulous.
All right. Vaughn and I are the two. Okay, wait. You did? Okay. Don't ask me, do I have to do it? You are a SEA employee, so yes, you have to do it. You got the email. Don't ask me what I think about it, because that's a different story. I just want to ensure it, because I've had that conversation with several people, and they're like, oh, I didn't read that. You're going to want to read that, okay? Because it's going to come back and bite you in the butt if you didn't, and if you don't comply with it. Okay? Any questions?
It's trackable because it's online.
Roger. It's not us, but it will impact you. Yes? That's what Michelle and I asked each other. We actually...
But we came up with a response because I asked myself this question. But we are members of a union, and so the union operates on solidarity, right? And when we make a decision together as a union that we are going to participate in this walkout, we've signed up for that. We're all impacted by that. So it means we as a union said that we've participated, we've walked out for 2 hours. We as a union all need to make up that time that we took from the district.
And we all know that everybody puts in many more hours than what we are paid for. So this particular thing would not be the place to raise and say I'm unjustly and inappropriately undercompensated. I get that.
Any questions about that?
And the only other thing is I would just put it out there. This is really about advancing our skills in terms of race and equity and justice for our students. So really, how terrible is it that that's the content that the district is using
instead of another one on diabetes,
the time rather than any number of other things that it could have been. So it's about becoming better versed in how to be agents of justice and change agents, as our PLC will be inviting you to do. But this just becomes an opportunity to be better skilled with our students and our families.
We have an online question about part-time employees and how, is it still the 2 hours or can it be prorated? And my response was ask HR because we're not the ones.
Not our rule.
This is not coming from us, so we don't really know. I'd ask HR if you have that question, and then tell us what the response was.
Yeah, we can place bets on what they say. Anything else?
Easy.
Okay, announcements. PLT, LMNOP.
Okay, I guess I'll speak for PLT. Your fabulous PLT met today, and we were looking at a number of issues. I'll go through them in sequence. We were looking at the prospect of the evaluation process. There's a small group that's looking at evaluations of us, not evaluations by us, but evaluations of us. There is a subgroup that is meeting around developing a position paper because some of the concerns that have been generated include the fact that if a principal is now the evaluator or building site administrator is now the evaluator, there may be some pressure that people participate in building activities rather than participate in district activities. So there's a sense of pull that always in the past we have been agents of the central office, and so we've had responsibilities for our central department rather than the individual schools where we are assigned. So that's just one of the factors. Another factor that is going on is some people have yet to see an evaluator or to have an evaluator do anything remotely like an evaluation for us. And again, we're pursuing some of the options that are available for that. One of the other things that we discussed was greater clarification around the borrowing of materials, the time span. At this point, it's slated to be a 2-week period of time that these can be taken out. So there's some discussion and comment about how to have that process perhaps be a little bit longer and how to negotiate or navigate if we feel we need it for more than the time that we can have it checked out. Another area that we looked at in terms of our PLT, we discussed some of the features that will be contributing to the distribution of how our assignments are formulated. The fancy term is something called FTE, full-time equivalency, which is essentially the ways that we are identified as paid. So if you're full-time, you're 1.0 FTE. I know many people feel as if we're 2.0 FTE. We're the most that the district can do for most of us is 1.0 FTE. There are actually some schools that have negotiated through some deviances that they can have 1.2, and those are some very special instances. Those don't tend to happen in our department, but that is an instance that can occur. So we're going to be looking at some of the factors. We're going to be getting information from the counting up of projected students. We're also going to be getting information about the number of evaluations that have been conducted so that we can use that kind of historical record. We're going to essentially go back. We've talked about the prospect of going back to a process where we weight what our work is in terms of servicing the general education population, what our work is in terms of servicing the special education population. There will be materials, questions coming to you. I believe that Teresa is going to be sending it out. Please respond. This is about your own sense, your own kind of internal ratings of the kind of time we all spend in the different activities that we do. So for example, if you're doing a reevaluation, that's 100% special education services. When you're participating in MTSS processes, SIT processes, depending on what version of things are going on in our respective schools, that would generally be general education. When you're talking with a family that isn't necessarily about special education, when you're doing something about related to perhaps 504, those would be other examples of regular general education services that are being provided. This is something that we used to do several years ago. We were dissuaded and discouraged from doing that, and it seems to be a better way to assess the best way to distribute. We're also looking at some of the weighty outliers. We found out that some people may have very few evaluations to conduct over the course of the year, in contrast with other people who may have very many evaluations over the course of the year. So we're looking at how we might make it a little bit more equitable, because if somebody is conducting 100 evals in a year and someone is conducting 15 evals in a year and they're both 1.0 FTE, you can imagine that the sense of demand is very different for fulfilling the responsibilities as a school psychologist. And I just drew those numbers out of the top of my head. I pulled out odd numbers because I just wanted to make a point rather than have people say, oh my God, who has only 15? Where can I sign up? How can I get that job? Or alternatively, for the obsessive compulsive among us, 100, how can I get that role? Who can I get that one from? It's just a way to illustrate that we're working to do that. We also took a moment to recognize that March 14th, many of you may not have been here when the PLT was operating, but from 10 o'clock until 10:17, there were a number of student-led activities across the country, depending on the time zones, where people were reverencing and trying to call to mind the death of the 17 students from the shooter in Florida. So those are one of the things that we were aware of. Did I miss anything in terms of?
Yeah, can I just add 2 quick things for PLT? So with the evaluation, kind of nice to do gold kind of spread, but it can impact you in the long term. So if you want to apply for things like community or career ladder, that's why I have to have these evaluations. So it's more important. So I'm going to be sending out a list of the people who have been assigned building these evaluators to see, have you been done or have you not? And it's up to you if you apply, but it's kind of a systemic thing here. So if you want to do anything more of it,
Yeah, my only other thing from that is we also wanted to, if you've been contacted but there's like zero further follow-up, like, hey, yeah, I know I'm your evaluator, but that's it. That's all you got. We'd like to know that too.
Yeah. And then the other thing is thank you for those who've been responding to your PLT surveys, because we're taking all that data and using it to make a lot of decisions. So you're going to be getting another survey coming out, and part of it's going to be asking like, how do you spend your time in your schools, right? Like, do you spend it with gen, special education, things like that. So thanks for
Spencer, can you clarify what should have happened up to this point with evaluators and the contact that they would have made?
So, well, a number of different.
Depending on your evaluator, they probably, provided that document that shows the timeline.
Yeah, and I think at a basic piece, right? What you should expect right now is that your evaluator, one, reached out to you, had a goal setting meeting with you. That should have occurred. They should also have had some dialogue with you around the process in the context of that goal setting. And then, the rest of the year really is outlined to provide evidence for them to have a kind of final evaluation meeting with you at the end of the conclusion of the year, capturing everything. So between the goal setting meeting and then the conclusion of the year, there's observations that should occur, there's data and conversation. And if they start thinking that, hey, if either you or them think that there's insufficient information or that they're concerned around your performance, there should be conversations throughout the way. So that's why it's important that they at least, you have some connection with them so that you're aware if they're thinking, hey, you're not meeting expectations, or if there's something really great that you're doing that they don't have no idea around, that you're able to have some mechanism to share that with them. I think what both Vaughn and Alina got to is, at the end of the day, what you really need to come out of the whole process with, regardless of the quality of the rest of it, is you need an evaluation report at the end. So it concerns us, I think, as a group, if either nobody's responsible right now as I'm doing your evaluation. You have no idea that anyone's actually going to produce a document for you at the end that says you were evaluated, right, for this school year. That's my primary concern. So exclusive of, there are many other things, but I really want to make sure that you have that document at the end of the year, because that's what precludes you from when HR says, hey, we got to go and reference that document to see if you're eligible for a career ladder position, and they can't find that. That's where problems happen, right? So
I don't know if I'm unique, but I haven't heard from anyone. So,
You go stand.
at the beginning of the school year, I was asked if I hadn't heard from anyone, to put my name on a list, which I did, and I haven't heard anything since.
okay.
So that's what you would respond to Alina's email when she solicits that info.
Yeah, and that's because I am aware of, I went and personally contacted every single principal that was supposed to be evaluating somebody, and then most every single one of those principals did respond back and said, got it, but then I don't know about the follow-up subsequent to that. That's why I'm asking, did you get notification? And then there was zero follow-up after. Did you get no notification? Or, because those are a little bit different. Some principals actually emailed me back, but then I heard from Sykes that they never got any contact from the principal, right? So.
I also have a question about how the evaluators are selected at the district level. So
yeah.
Before I had a supervisor that actually works in my region and works with me throughout the year, and now I have somebody who I never haven't seen as a volunteer or work with. So how is that?
So that's the complexity of it, right? So what happens is generally we try to bind them by region because it makes sense, right? If the supervisor is supporting your schools and you're in those schools, it makes the most sense, just proximity. But because what happens is primary assignment between SLPs, occupational therapists, and school psychs, they're uneven. So what you'll have is one region with a lot of if we put everybody to that one supervisor, they would have an enormous evaluation caseload. So we do try to even it out as much as we can, given that context. So you or somebody else might have been then allocated to a different supervisor. So usually the supervisors sit down with the special ed directors and try to parse it out so that there's a fairly even distribution. There's some better ways to do it. So I suggested some ideas for the department, looking at whether people are incomprehensive or are not. But right now it's really just by numerical count. So similar to us in reevals. Yeah, that's it. Any other questions? Okay.
Sorry, I want to make sure that the people that she told that they had a certain amount of time, they're given
They
that
get the
time.
time.
I'm in charge now. We're going to be done at 12:30, so we can eat lunch. There's important and then there's important. Sunshine.
Oh.
We have to.
Do I need to stand up here?
Yes.
So just a few things from Sunshine. So Sunshine has been operating quietly behind the scenes, like making sure that people get gifts and things like that. We are towards the end of the year, so we're starting to like think more about the budget and make sure that we are not spending too much money. So if you haven't paid your dues, paying those now will be extremely helpful, so we can make sure to like get out the things that we want to give to people, and also just to provide snacks. And the other thing is, we haven't followed up on it, but Teresa Frazier has an art exhibit that is is it ending this week?
No, it ends April 13th.
It is. Oh, it's on Schoology already?
I did it.
Okay,
I said
sorry.
I did it.
So I think we're just, so Teresa Frazier has an art exhibit. The information's on Schoology, and you can go see that. It's amazing. And also I think we're going to try to add things in the future. If people are doing like stuff outside of being a school psychologist and they're like interested in showing that off or learning about.
We should picture of all of her artwork. So if you can't make it over signature on that, you should anyway. But if you can't make it over there, you can see the amazing artistic ability that she has. And you can argue with Justin and I on which one's your favorite painting, because we do not agree at all.
But they're amazing. And it's just a way for us in the future to start to get to know each other a little bit more, because I feel like I've learned a lot from school psychs this year. And so that would just be a way to help that out. Also, you have shout out little templates on your, hopefully in front of you. And if you could please fill those out. If you have a shout out that you would like to give, and then just hand those to me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Not for me. It's really awkward to put them in the weekly cycle book, and it only be for me. It feels like I'm making them up.
You make more work for her if you fill it out for her, because she feels bad about how many are in there for her, and then she goes and writes more.
That is true. Or I go and text you and say, "Psst, give me one." Okay. SEA. Haha.
So just very briefly in terms of SEA, because of our time constraint, I am going to send an email out to people about 5 key points. So please be looking for that, 5 key points. If anyone can tell me those 5 key points, whoever tells me those 5 key points first will get a Starbucks card. Okay, so look in your emails. If you have not gotten an email from me this past week, then please come to me so that I can get your email address and add you to the list. And I always do it on blind CC, so your personal private email data is not going out. But there is a lot of stuff going on. Thank you.
I have a question. How much is the Starbucks gift card for?
Enough for at least one drink, right?
Yeah.
Or a sandwich, if that's your purview.
Okay. So, Pei-Ling had coordinated to have 2 different groups of individuals present on some different professional development opportunities that exist within the district. So first, Liz is going to talk to us about sensory integration tools.
So I was thinking today, am I out of my mind? Why do I want to present in front of a bunch of very critical, trained, critical peers? But I am here, and I said I give everyone
Because you have a good idea.
a sensory tool. I want them. You want to do anything? You don't want to touch them. Okay. So when I thought of sensory tools, I'm thinking, I don't know.
Self-awareness.
What should I know?
Yeah, it was. I had no observation.
You had those slapping things when you were a kid, didn't you?
Yeah.
Those are awesome.
Yes, they were.
Those are awesome.
No, that's why you have children and you hand them the fidget and you go, oh, nope, not recommending that one. See what Danny can do with it.
He doesn't like it. He doesn't like it. All right. So I'm gonna stick with my notes so I don't go off on a tangent. And actually, one of the things I was gonna say to you is feel free to use the fidget. You're not playing with it, you're using it, but feel free to use it while I'm talking. However, if it looks like you are using it as a toy or poking Vaughn with it, then that tells me it's not working for you to help you listen, and so then I'll remove it. But you don't have to test me on it. Okay, so I'd like to share some ideas on how we can provide sensory tools as supports to entire classrooms. So I'm not talking about just giving it to one person who sits up front. I like to normalize it and just provide it to everybody. And I just think that it's been a useful resource. It's a useful resource for teachers and students. And it gives me a way to get my foot in the door. So I'm at 3 grade schools, and it just gives me a way to check in with people and be seen and known. And it's kind of fun. And then the follow-up is kind of interesting. And so actually, I got the idea from Liz on the 1st grade teacher who brought it to a feedback meeting, and she showed me what she showed all of us what she's using. I took it, and the whole time I'm doing my report, I'm doing this under the table, and it's like, oh, you can't break it, and it's great. No one really, well, I mean, that's noisy, it was quieter, but it was like, it's like, oh my gosh, this is kind of cool, you know. So the challenge was, can you break it? And I actually found an IEP manager who could, but I think it's a nice little fidget. And as Vaughn pointed out, if you hand this to some kid, they're going to do this. And actually, my husband said the same thing. So it's like you can cut them into thirds, you can cut them in half. I mean, it's cheap, it's easy, and teachers.
Because they're not marketed as fidgets, so they will be cheaper than fidgets right now, because it's the thing, right?
No, it was like $7 for 100.
Whoa.
I know. So basically, a sensory toolkit which is kind of where I started. It's a collection of sensory tools that everyone in the class can use, and you have teacher management built in there. So in the old days when I first started, they would give the kid who has I'm sorry, I keep looking at Vaughn. They would give one student clay or something, and he had to have it. You couldn't take it away. And then he'd be doing all these weird, inappropriate things, and then everyone became afraid of fidgets. And I still run into that somewhat with teachers who have been teaching for a while. But that's not the idea. I always explain to teachers there's management built into it, and part of teaching self-regulation is that if it's not working for a child, you remove it. It's not a failure. You want to give them another try. But if they're motivated to use it, then they're going to use it more appropriately is the idea. So what I did, because I have 3 schools, of course, each one's different. One of my schools, I didn't see any signs of sensory tools when I got there. The other 2, there were some. So at this one school, I decided to do a school-wide program. And it was actually my busiest year, and I think I did have like 100 evals, and for some reason, I just wanted to do this. And so what I did, how I started was I got a grant from PTA, and, you know, it took a little work, but I got the grant. I bought the materials, went to a staff meeting, and I presented something along these lines, trying to get teacher buy-in. I just said, we're starting a program to introduce a listening toolbox with fidgets that any student in your class can use, and then I explained fidgets are self-regulation tools that can help with attention and calming. So this was 3 years ago, and this school just didn't really have any kind of universal knowledge to it. So I started at the beginning and just explained effective fidgeting is a deliberate redirection of movement. It shouldn't distract students from learning because it's something they don't need to think about. And so when I come to your class and talk about it, I'll explain that the kids need to use them correctly, but it will send a message to their brain and help them listen. So I'm trying to get buy-in from teachers with my little short and sweet talk.
They have it.
Do I need to stand back here?
I have it. No, I'm just following you. I have a child who is in his 6th year at that school, so I can share that all of his teachers.
Which class is it? Or?
He has Dwayne now.
Oh, she's so great.
Martin,
yeah.
But I remember.
Oh, Miss Martin.
No, Mr. Martin,
Mr.
in
Martin.
3rd grade.
Okay.
And then last year, oh my God, who did he have in 4th grade? But again, like in parent-teacher conferences, they talked about it like it was shared openly as that this is and I love the fact that it's a classroom kit. So it's not, that's my fidget, you can't take it, Miss Scott gave it to me. it's the teacher's classroom kit. So it's still in the teacher's.
Well, and then I was in actually in a first, second grade split this week, and on the wall she had like all her little wiggle seats and her headphones and something else, and I actually was sitting there observing a kid, and I had to move because this little lineup of 8 kids was coming to get their wiggle seats for a writing activity, and at the end of it, they all put it back. And I didn't hear the teacher at all give any directions. They just had been, this was the classroom management. It was totally cool. So what I did at this school, because like I say, it was brand new, I, after presenting to teachers, asked, you know, who's interested, and got, 8 or so classes, most of them, not all. And then went into, scheduled a time, went into each class and did a presentation with the kids and their little toolbox. And I know I haven't really spread it out nicely, but the idea is they would have more than this, but have a little box, and you come in and it really looks inviting because you can see all these goodies. And I'd have the teacher there because I still want to try to help the teacher have buy-in and also see that she can manage it. It's totally that way. So I'm talking to the kids, but I'm also talking to the teacher. So what I would do, and I'm sorry, I'm going to go through this a little bit just because I'm not sure if you all would know how you want to approach it. But just say, I'm Miss Scott. I brought some tools for your classroom. So for your classroom, for your teacher to share with you. So very deliberate. And these are tools to help you listen better in class. So then, because I had 20 minutes and I needed to make it interesting, I had my little poster to talk about good listening skills for the kids. And we go through this, about what each of these things are. And the kids are sitting there and they actually get into it quite a bit. They kind of enjoyed it. They liked having the new person in presenting to them. Has anyone seen this poster? I mean, I see it once in a while. I'm sure there's newer, better ones, but this one worked. And so then what I do is I compare it and I say, well, now think about a car. What makes a car run? Our cars all the same, so kind of engaging the kids. They're all different, and it takes many things to make a car go. And we might talk about what makes a car go. Get them thinking about it. And so then I would say, well, our brains are also different. And sometimes we come to school ready to learn, and sometimes we're too tired or excited. So just being fairly general, and then talking about how many of you had breakfast, and did that help you feel better? So then I just start introducing little tools that might help them. Start with this nice big one. So these are a wiggle stool, and I know we have evolved to the bigger chairs and all sorts of things. I like this because it's so simple. And when I give the kids, each class a tool kit, they might have 3 of these. And then what I find is teachers might get their parents to buy more if they like them. But it's got a little air. And what I explain to the kids, I might put it on a chair and say, hey, who wants to try this? And let one person try it. It just depends on the group. And it's like, see, you kind of feel like you're out at recess. You're getting a little movement. Try to get a little buy-in. So these are good. Then I would show them the headphones. These are $3 at Harbor Freight. These actually are Stevens, I don't think had any, but it's like now they have them in the lunchroom. The music teacher wants them because like when they're doing recorders, it just gives you a little...
It echoes everywhere in that building.
And what I find, and you probably already know this, I'm sure you do, but when kids are doing independent work time and you're supposed to be thinking of your story and things, a lot of kids benefit by just being able to shut out their neighbor or the group over there. So what I like to see is each classroom to have a box with like about 5 or 6 of these in them, and the kids help themselves. Mm-hmm. So just a basic, cheap tool, but they hold up. Like I say, I just get the cheap ones, and I can't afford to buy the $7 to $15 ones. It's $3.
The dogs are having for
Well, if they're good ones.
Yeah, they're like recommended.
And almost everybody says, well, how do you keep them clean? And I'm thinking, I don't know. But then after they've been here for a while, nobody seems to care.
Elementary school teachers are pretty gifted at answering that question, just generally.
Yeah. So the Velcro, I always thought Velcro was boring until actually this Miss Martine's class, the way she had them all get to use it, she put them on tables and you rotated. So I got to the Velcro table with kids, and it's like, oh, let's rub our hands on it. And it's like, oh my gosh, I'm really getting a little message to my brain. It's kind of like if you rub your hands on your pants. It's like, oh yeah, I feel it. So, this one has tape and you would stick it underneath. And what I found is, this is the interesting part about sharing sensory tools, is every teacher wants to come up with however, they use it differently. So I'll have a couple teachers that just want it for everybody. And luckily I can do it if just a couple people want them. So they will actually let the kids, do you want the rough or the soft? And some of these kids really embrace it and they want to, it's just like a class thing.
You got like 4 minutes.
Oh, 4 minutes? You're kidding. I thought I'd be done. Okay. Well, this is actually something I made because I saw a kindergarten girl who couldn't quit playing with somebody's hair. And I thought, well, let's give her something to pet. So it's just a weighted rice bag. And here again, sometimes I'll give teachers like 2 or 3 of these, just the younger ones, younger grades. And it's very popular. It's weighted. It's actually very soothing. And I actually have had a couple second grade classes really embrace it where I needed to get them like 20. The other one are these stretch bands. Has anyone seen the stretch bands for the front couple feet of the chairs that wouldn't work here? These are actually really popular too. I usually will give people like 3 of them and they might ask for more or they might buy their own. And one thing I did at my other school that I didn't, so I don't do the whole program at every school. So my other 2 schools, they did have some things. So what I did is I emailed saying, does anyone want stretch bands and Velcro? And nobody really answered. So then I just kind of put these on my arm and walked around during lunch and just found teachers doing planning. And I said, hey, can you use some of these things? And everybody took them. So it was kind of a way for me to go have a way, talk to the teachers, explain how it worked. I give them the quick 30-second thing about self-regulation, like if the kid misuses it, you take it away. Give them a try another day. So I don't have to do the whole presentation for it to work,
Now that they're all using Ruler, have you thought about using that for additional buy-in of, depending on where they're at on the mood meter?
Sure. I mean, yeah.
Just because that's a vocabulary that, teachers are presenting it so they're familiar with it.
Yeah, I don't think Stevens was really doing Ruler too much 3 years ago, so.
Yeah, now they have the mood meter on the playground. They actually painted it on the, it's pretty cool.
So actually, it doesn't take that much of my time now because I'm not really going to do a whole school-wide thing again. I just check and see what people need, and I give them the little description about how to use it, how to get management, and then the teachers really embrace it and take off. And like I'll come back later and like one first grade teacher at another school, I'd just given her a couple items. I came back a year later, her room had just absolutely exploded in sensory tools. It was just so much fun to see the things she has tried. So people really like the idea of a universal design. Anyway, did I cover everything? Sorry, I didn't think I would actually do it.
It's an interesting topic.
Yeah.
When Liz was telling me about it initially, I was really impressed. Number one, that she had the classroom kit idea, because that's a lot of the pushback that I get is when you try to give it to one kid and then that it becomes a power struggle. And also the fact that she goes in and gives a presentation, not only to the staff, but to the students. It was like, oh, I never thought of that.
But I haven't done it at the other schools, and it's just one of the things. It needed to be done, but the other schools don't need me to do that.
Yeah.
If it's otherwise being put away, can I sit on the little?
Absolutely.
OMG. Raise your hand if you're surprised. I'm nothing. I'm just making sure you're paying attention.
Everybody should sit on a wiggle seat once in a while. They actually are kind of fun.
I wiggle naturally. I don't need anything to help with that. Oh, here's your rubber band, Liz. So now Miss Alina and Brokey, you're up to talk about your PD opportunity. Stay in between. Yeah. You wanted to talk in front of the group. People Skyping in don't want to just like envision you in the ether.
Hi. So this is more of a shout out than presentation. But we're going to be talking to you about the BAIT team. Has anybody heard of that? Familiar with?
Do you guys remember?
Go for it.
Well, so Stephanie King is in charge of BAIT team basically, and she came, I think it was last year, and did a presentation to our department. So it was a little while ago. So basically, The BATE team essentially is a coaching team for special education teachers.
And it stands for the Behavior Autism Intervention Team. So hopefully that clarifies some stuff.
Yes. And so essentially, like, right now it's not into high schools as much, but hopefully we'll go in that direction. But basically, a teacher can put in a request for students they're having difficulty with, and they email the BATE, and they have to fill out some paperwork, and then essentially a teacher goes out, and then it's like a peer kind of coaching system, basically. And so they go out and they say, okay, what kind of supports do you have in place? What kind of supports could we add? And it's just kind of, it's not like a punitive thing, basically, which is kind of nice. And so essentially, we have been a part of this starting this school year.
Yeah, and so Stephanie King is trying to incorporate more of the school psychologist mental health knowledge into the BATE process. So teaming with some of these special education teachers that go into certain programs. Oh, Cam, thank you. So Stephanie King is trying to incorporate school psychologists into the BATE team, and having them look at the mental health aspect of some of these challenging cases. So we've gone in a variety of classrooms across different programs, access, distinct, focus. We just brought on a resource teacher, so now that that program is going to be addressed soon, and we meet every other Friday, so twice a month, 7 a.m. West Woodland Elementary. Nope. It's a little rough.
You lost me.
But it's nice to do something where you're thinking about intervention and just behavior in general rather than doing testing. So it does require extra time. It's not an FTE thing. It is. There is some resources allocated to where you can get extra time paid for doing this, and the estimate is about 8 hours a month that you would work, and 2 of those hours would be the BATE team meetings in the North Pole, Seattle. And did I forget anything?
I think that's a bit. I mean, I guess what I've enjoyed is some of that teacher collaboration, seeing what's happening in the district. I mean, sometimes I've been partnering with teachers and they might have a question about something on the eval, so that's been helpful. So we wanted you to be aware, because sometimes we've seen you guys in the buildings and we're like, oh, what are you doing here?
I was bored, thought I was gonna say hi.
And also, we're looking to maybe recruit a few more bodies if you're interested in expanding your role, expanding the role of the school psychologists in general, and doing some behavior and intervention stuff. We're trying to do some FBAs and BIPs, so that'll be something that you can work on, kind of work some of those muscles you haven't done in a while.
Yeah.
Let's see. Yeah, no, it's really great to actually go in and do an observation and do a lot of problem solving. Because sometimes we go in and do an observation and it's just, is the kid on task? Are they accessing the curriculum?
Yeah.
This is, it's really fun to do some problem solving and collaborate with other special education staff.
And so typically we would meet with the teacher once, think about some interventions, come back in a few weeks, see how things are going. So it's kind of that ongoing relationship. And I think something that I feel a lot of teachers really enjoy. And it's something you could talk to your teachers about too. So in your school, if you know that there's a particularly difficult classroom, maybe doesn't have a lot of structural supports, that might be a good candidate. That's
maybe some students that are hanging from the rafters.
Climbing on the roof.
Open concept classrooms, that's kind of been tough for some of the students that have been observing. So we wanted to let you know that if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us, contact us, or Stephanie King. She's got all the details and can provide a lot more information.
Do they ever get involved in placement decisions, or if there's like a big crisis that do they change the program?
I would say from like a consultation aspect.
Yeah, but they wouldn't come into like an assessment or even mental health records or like work with the team and if we need to change the more.
So I think that it would be some of the talk around placement is we don't directly say this is the placement, but we would say these are the interventions you might want to consider and track before you consider these placements, right?
Or do a couple observations, provide that data. And then help implement an FBA or do an FBA, implement a BIP.
Right, or so in these cases too, or have you considered the mental health?
Mostly working consulting.
Yes, so like thinking of things that if that hasn't come up, right? If the teacher hasn't thought about those things, well, maybe you want to get some input from that person, right? Yeah.
Is it limited to special ed staff or special ed teachers to access, or can that be requested?
Good question.
That's a good question. I think this time it's just special education.
I think that we had one special education teacher refer a student who was she was going into a gen ed setting and having difficulties, so it was kind of that partnership there. But I mean, it was still through the special education teacher. If that makes sense. So when she would go into this other gen ed setting, she was having more difficulty, and so the special educator was having difficulty kind of changing that environment. So it was kind of through that partnership that they were able to change a little bit in the gen ed setting. Does that make sense?
So I would say that we've mostly worked with special education students.
Yeah.
But I think we could expand to general education.
It might be a capacity or funding issue.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Or Jennifer, and then
It's
Scott.
more like the behavior autism, like how much of it is SEL students versus kind of more like focus and distance?
Honestly, it's been a mix. So the resource is new, but Access and SEL and Focus have been the three big programs.
And they have teachers.
Yeah, there's about
programs.
2 or 3 teachers per, like 18 teachers per level, and they'll go out to various schools.
Mm-hmm.
And then Scott?
Specific students with autism?
No, even just students with some challenging behaviors that the staff is like racking their brains. Like, we've tried everything. We would love to have a fresh pair of eyes come in and help. So.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's kind of nice too, because I think at the elementary we don't see all the program levels. So I think some of the teachers are thinking like it's like this is so extreme, right? But like how does this compare to other programs? So it's hard to have that global view sometimes.
And so, and I think a lot of what the special education teachers on the team have been doing has been going in and helping teachers with kind of the tier 1 supports and seeing how that can address some of the behaviors, maybe do some tier 2 stuff. So classroom management, classroom setup.
So what should a distinct classroom be set up with? Things like that.
Any other questions?
So did we just email you guys if we were interested in access?
I would email Stephanie King, and it's sjking@Salesforce. Oh, BATE. Yeah, Behavior Autism Intervention Team.
Oh, and there's an SEL support page on Schoology too.
Oh, yes.
I was going to do that with mine.
We can send out the code to access that on Schoology.
They have a lot of really good stuff on there.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll send that around right now.
Right now?
I can do.
You're not doing
it. Give me 30 seconds.
From here goes to her
She
computer.
said
and
That's what I was going to do.
All right.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, so the last thing on the agenda was for the high school PLC to share all their amazing work. I'm not on it, so don't look at me. Who is, I don't even know who's on it. Oh, Glenn stood up with authority.
Let's support Scott with our physical presence. We talked about several topics in our high school PLC, but the main thing that we focused on was transition. So how to like really improve transition assessment for students with a wide range of abilities. And so we ended up kind of working on a case study that you guys did all the work on this one, but so Scott's going to talk about the particular student.
We'll talk about our case study, kind of give an overview and some background, and then like sort of the assessment process for transitioning. So this was a 16-year-old male student, 11th grade, high school, qualifies health impairment, was born extremely premature, low birth weight, mild cognitive delays, language delays, and is in the Access program. And so when he came to high school from middle school, the parent wanted him in all sort of mainstream classes, and we at first were kind of hesitant to do that just based on, and his IQ was like 72. We reassessed that, and he was 74 on the DOS-2. So, we wanted to kind of see what he could do first, maybe in a more contained setting, and then see what, would it be like for him in a gen ed setting. But So parent advocated, so he's in all mainstream with support, one-on-one support. Very, very low processing speed. His academic skills are low average, some average, low average. Comprehension is weak. Processing is very weak. All modified grades, one-on-one support. So we met for the reevaluation, and part of that was the transition assessment and kind of getting a sense of what the parent was expecting him to maybe, would he be successful in a college setting, in a community college setting, 2-year college setting, maybe transfer to 4-year college. So that was really kind of the question, and sort of what information do we have to either to make a recommendation for that, and kind of what would be available in terms of like what level of support he would need. So when we go through like the transition assessment, we go through the needs. And most of that is taken from the evaluation. So that's like the adverse impact. For him, it's mostly processing and language and learning, and then again, sort of what sort of accommodations he would need, sort of like in a, like a community college setting. Academic skills are like low average, again, comprehension, language, and then we go into strengths. So his strengths are, he's very persistent, he's got good study habits, he works well with people, and he's actually, I would say, he's probably outperformed his IQ. So, it's, that's one thing, and then he's actually done quite well with instruction experience in the gen ed, so that was actually probably a pretty good suggestion from the father. He doesn't, he persists, and he's pretty motivated. He's got good study skills, supportive family, manages failure pretty well too. That was strengthened by the father's attendance is good. And then we look at preferences, and so most of that, and this is all through like interview, assessment, review of existing data, previous evaluations and IEPs. So preferences, we would give him a kind of like a learning styles questionnaire to see, how he learns best, what his style is. His was more of the auditory learning, auditory visual, and working with people. He was more in like the social helping domain. He was interested in coaching, very interested in basketball. And so I think in conversations with the parent, we were thinking like, oh, maybe he could be like an assistant coach, or he could take classes at community college and look at jobs in like as a physical trainer or coaching. Let's see. Yeah, preferences too, again, would be, again, we're looking at like accommodations, working in teams versus working alone. You can see him working maybe at, I don't know if we're looking at groups like community centers and things like that. And then interests. Again, that was, more interview-based. What are his interests? What does he want to do after graduation? And so he would also like to go to 2-year community college. And then, his interests again were sort of in basketball. He didn't have any specific career interests. So we kind of wanted to explore that more, work with the counselors. He'll do like a career interest survey, like a high school and beyond plan. And then, our recommendations, I guess, at this point to see if he, would he be successful in a community college setting? Be like, okay, we'll go to, let's explore the local community colleges, what supports they have. He's in the North End, so there's like Seattle, North Seattle Community College has a program there with support. Seattle Central, with the Vocational Institute there. I think now they partner with Bridges. That would sort of be the next tier up, but we're just kind of curious to see where he would place in a community college setting. So, go online, look at those colleges, and take the Wonderlic would be one of the entrance exams, right? So look at where he would be placed in terms of college level courses. So recommend them to family to do that. Have him go down, take that assessment, see how he does on the SAT. Go out and explore some of these other colleges. And really it's kind of working with the family and, having them sort of explore their options. And then, he'll have one more year with us. So we'll kind of get, collect more data and see where he's successful and kind of, again, and then career-wise, there's, you could go like the Career Bridge, online surveys, interest inventories. looking at jobs and like what educational requirements, skills requirements are needed for like maybe an entry-level position, like a coaching job or assistant coaching or physical training, things like that. So we'd have him do that, kind of learn more about what's available, and then just try and see what he can do, and then we get closer and have a better idea of where he would be successful in terms of post-secondary and job and career.
So secondary psychs, or even any psychs, what would you come up with for recommendations for what you've heard just a little bit from Scott about this particular student? Gordon. Job shadow.
You were over there. I was thrown for a second. I was like, Gordon was over there.
I said that. I can only hear about half what you're saying.
Okay, right. Job shadow would be good. He's a junior. Yeah.
Did you say if he had been a TA?
No.
So maybe for the PE
no
teacher?
No job experience, very limited volunteer experience. That was one thing we talked about was, getting, doing like a volunteer work, maybe at a community center or at a job site they might be interested in.
Anything else that secondary folks?
Do you have service learning hours?
Yeah.
Hours, like kind of sports related capacity?
Are they required?
Yeah, and that'll
all
be
of them
12th grade. They'll be doing.
SPS requires that for all kids now. 60 hours.
Right.
We talked about it with our 7th graders yesterday.
I guess I'd also be curious if the family has particular chores or activities that they're already doing, so that they can be thinking that, my having him wash the dishes, my having him turn the computer off, my having him do all of these things, how to start to make the link between the daily activities that he's already engaged in as precursors to work skills. Because I ask every kid, what are the chores that you're expected to do at home? How much money do you get for your chores? If you don't get money, do you ever get money? How do you spend your money? I mean, those are things that I'd be asking the kids. If you spend money, do you spend it? Do you save it? So does he have a relationship, an idea about how to be with money? Because that's all going to impact, it costs money to go to school. It costs money to be in school. It costs money to
have
virtually do everything. Otherwise, I don't think many people would be here if there wasn't a money component.
Maybe like metro training, can you navigate communities and coaching? I think that's great.
They'll come and do
Training's
it.
free.
Yeah.
It's totally free, and it's good. We've had a lot of students go through, and even if you're not successful, you practice, you come back, and they'll help you. So, and in the transition world, the transition program, that is probably the biggest factor is transportation. If you can get a student metro independent, that opens up everything in terms of jobs, social life, entertainment, you name it. And they could take their elderly, grandparents or someone to their appointment, right? They feel very proud to get metro independent. And the biggest thing is to convince scared parents that to let go, it's okay. And those metro trainers, they're all about the fade plan. They'll get you on, they'll be there with you, they'll coach you, and then they slowly fade. And then they become spies, and they sign off and say, yep, you're all good, right? So metro is huge.
Is it a component of the training, like how to deal with it when something scary happens
exactly.
on Metro?
So like last year, there was an accident on Rainier. Somebody got run over by the link. And so the whole link stopped, and our students were coming from the north end down to Highline College, but they were trained to have a backup plan when stuff like that happens. Even if your bus doesn't show up, what do you do? So they called, their call to people, and some of them had phones and knew how to go on Metro Trip Planner, and everybody got to school on their own, which was like, whoa.
But what about like if
some
somebody
students
confronts
like,
them?
oh my God, no. What?
Like what if someone confronts them on the bus or on the train?
They're
Because
trained.
that happens too.
They're trained to deal with that too.
Sweet.
I was wondering, are there, if you knew any parameters around other students that wouldn't be metro trained or like they wouldn't accept?
Yeah, so some students they're just not ready. They can't do it for whatever reason. So then they can become access eligible, which is that door-to-door service from Metro. But the one challenge with access is they give you a window when they're going to show up. It's not like 11 o'clock. It's like between 10:30 and 11:45.
Yeah.
And the cable guy's gonna show up.
Right. It's like a cable guy type, right?
The Metro will assess which.
Exactly. And you have to apply to access, and they do an evaluation to make sure that you're access eligible because it's a high cost program.
So program-wide, so this is the kid who's in all academic classes, you know, and then so looking at, okay, what are like transition goals and SDI look like for, you know, the kid who needs maybe Metro, but yet, you know, parent is, you know, advocating for him to be in, you know, all like core academic classes and sort of college bound.
So that's why it's
independent living skills, like we would suggest like, you know, financial math or something like financial algebra, but parent doesn't want that, wants him to be in, you know, regular algebra 2 class, modified, but that's sort of that was kind of the.
So my kind of reply to that parent kind of vibe is, okay, let's look at a movie, and the movie is when your child is 22 and an adult. What are they doing for working, independent living, and learning? WILL, that's an acronym, W-I-L-L. What are they doing? What will they be doing when they're 22? And what happens, no matter what, if you're out of the picture? How independent is your child going to be? What's going to get that child, your child, to that point where they can do those 3 big things, working, independent living, and learning? Let's work backwards from there and figure out how we're going to do that. And if they're really stuck in a certain way, convince them with data. We're really good at data. We're psychs. So have the student take the Wonderlic at the college. That's the English language arts test that they place you with. Have them take the ALEX, which is the math test for placement. Have them take the GED practice test to see if that's even a viable option in terms of 10th grade level skills. Have them go to the college and do their own assessment and talk to disability support services and see what accommodations are available. Put them to work. Get the family to do homework about what it's going to take. So for example, this kid, he wants to be a coach or a fitness trainer, right? Yeah. So I go online, it took me 2 minutes. I went to Seattle Public Schools, assistant coach, and there was a basketball coach, assistant basketball coach at Salmon Bay. And here are the requirements. You have to be a high school graduate or a GED. You have to complete a WIAA coach's requirements, whatever that is. You have to have a Washington State driver's license. You have to have a valid hands-on first aid and CPR certification, and you have to take the SPS sexual misconduct class. Can that kid pass these things? Can that kid do the driver's license? A lot of our students, no diets. So when I present like the real world data to them, it really reshapes which direction they're going to go. So it's going to happen next year, and hopefully it'll start this year. The district is hiring 16 worksite learning coordinators, and they're going to be assigned to different high schools. And their job is to provide the job shadow, internships, get students in some cases employed if they're ready to be employed. So there's 16 evidence-based indicators of successful post-secondary outcomes for students, and one of them is having a job. If a student can have a job before they leave, that's a huge predictor of whether they're going to be successful in a job once they're out. So the district is starting to get their head around that and really improve. But
is that SPED?
It's not
personnel.
SPED.
That's gen ed. So that's something that's going to be open.
CTE, so career technical education is going to implement this. So it's not just SPED. It's everybody.
So did you say that the student has a one-on-one?
No, through the Access program, there's an IA that goes into the classroom and supports him. I mean, it's not for every class. I mean, he's somewhat independent, but it's still, he's moving at a much slower pace than most students. It's really, there's just a lot of unknowns about this kid. So that's, we'll start with, if the father wants to see if he can be successful in community college, and we'll do the placement tests and see how that comes out. That might be sort of the next step then of, maybe a reality check there.
And then they'll see if he's eligible for Writing Start class, which is free, right? But you have to be at a certain level on the Wonderlic and the ALEX in order to take those classes. So
that was my question. What is that level? Like, what's the bar?
So think of it this way. Think of like the SBAC. If students are passing at about a level 3 on the reading, they're probably going to be okay in a Writing Start placement test in general.
And he did score a level 3.
He did score level 3, so that's why it's so important to have data.
I mean, it's interesting, but you see him like in reality. Like, I mean, it takes him a long time to comprehend and to respond, and his articulation disorder too is pretty hard to understand. Which are, I mean, all these challenges, but yet, and with the low COG scores, still, I don't know. It's an interesting kid.
It's a pattern of strengths and weaknesses for this guy.
I was wondering, so like logistically taking the ALEX, and we're like, how is there a way we can get a hold of that?
You could look up practice tests online and do that, but you got to go to the college, and if you have a student who needs accommodations, they need to arrange accommodations with the Disability Support Services office at that college. Every college has one, but you got to go there. And what do you go there with? You got to go with your paperwork. And they don't want to hear from you. They want to hear from the parent. They want to hear from the student. So if the student can articulate, I have a disability. Whoa, that's a big jump. I have a disability. Here's what it is. This is the adverse impact of my disability. And these are accommodations that I need. If that's one thing you can give your students before they leave, before they go to college, that's huge. But oftentimes, once the kids get to college, they're done with SPED. They don't want anything to do with special ed or any disability language or anything like that. And what happens is they go through 1 quarter, 2 quarters, and they're bombing. And then they go to the Disability Support Services office, right? So it's like, if we could get them trained now, and there's nothing to be ashamed of about having a disability. It's just, it's a diffability. It's a difference. It's just a different way of navigating the world. Get that pride a little bit. Huge impact.
Working in high schools where all of the IEPs are student-led, and that's exactly what the student starts the IEP.
Yeah.
It shifts it, right? It
does.
normalizes it, and it puts the ownership on them to be able to discuss that. Because if they can't talk about it, what's the point?
Is there something that we can do when we're doing the 7th or 8th grade evals for the students that we know are going to have transition services that will make your process easier?
You a cog? You're welcome.
And really start thinking of it this way too. Like think of it in terms of the SNPs. The SNPs, it's another acronym. So it's for the high school people. They'll know what SNPs are: the strengths, needs, interests, and preferences. If you could start clicking on that eval tab, this is age appropriate transition assessment.
Just put something in the
Just throw
box.
some stuff in there. Low processing speed, therefore we'll need extra time, right, for needs. Strengths, verbal comprehension, very high, loves to use language, or whatever. You can use the data that you already have. You don't have to write a bunch of stuff. Just build the foundation, and that's going to guide the team to think of it. Because really, if you really think about it, if you don't have age-appropriate transition assessment, you don't have appropriate post-secondary outcome goals. Therefore, you have a non-compliant IEP. You have something that's not, you can't really build a foundation on something. So if the goal is just graduation, you have to think further down the road. It's not just the diploma.
And if they're going to have it by age 16, if you're doing an eval on a kid who's 13 or older, you need to be introducing that.
So that's what I was going to say. Speaking of working backwards, one idea that we really wanted to promote as a high school team is, and it's not a mandate, you don't have to, but always doing the age-appropriate transition assessment. Because it really is answering just those 4 questions, and really going through the evaluation process, you should be able to put at least a few keywords into those boxes. But the idea, so this is my first year in high school after like dabbling in it during internship, and it's really exciting because it's like, oh, this is what it's all actually about, right? Like, this is the point. It's not to be in school just to be in school. It's not just to graduate. It's how from preschool, well, from birth really and on, how are we getting children ready to be prepared for the world? So if we think about transition as something starting from preschool, kindergarten, and continuing through, that's I think what would be really helpful. And just like, yeah, it was surprising to me that it was a totally different mindset now being in high school and then thinking about what is this kid going to do after we don't have our hands on them anymore. And in elementary, you're focused on like, how are we going to get them through elementary school? In middle, how are we going to get them through middle school? But if we're really thinking, what is this 3rd grader? What are our goals? What is this kid's individual goals? What are its family's goals? And what are our goals of what they will be and what they will do after graduation, and start working towards that? That would be great. That's my little spiel. Scout.
Just kind of asking, just kind of getting them started on thinking about it. And took the questions I found from the report examination, and changed it and a little bit and back with my students. And then another thing I found, Children's Hospital on their website has like some forms that students can fill out. Ask them like their name and birthday, but class teaches them and asks them to put in like whether you're current diagnosis, so you're taking medication, what are other medications, and teaches them how to advocate for themselves at doctor's appointments. But it's also like another piece of transition information to send to Catholic, but you know, and what do you have to go to the doctor, or what are they going to test? But I've found that putting that in the questionnaire was really on top of that, and it makes it easier to help
I stole an idea from Mallory because she started putting in hers, like she would have all the student-specific stuff, but would also start putting in the information about how to contact DDA and Social Security. And again, like you're talking about a 7th or 8th grade kid that you know they're going there. Yes, you want to have those conversations. You should have already had those conversations, but you definitely don't want them waiting until they're 17 and then trying to get their act together, especially for parents that English isn't their primary language or access is as a whole. So just sometimes even just putting in information that's available elsewhere, but it's one more place that you're like, oh yeah, they had the phone number right there that I can call.
And if you have students who you're evaluating who have intellectual disabilities or developmental disabilities, you know they're probably going to qualify for DDA if they haven't already. So you can go to DDA and there's a table of all the tests that they accept, the IQ tests and the adaptive measures that they accept. So if you're ever in doubt and you think, oh, I just want to bust out a reops real quick, right?
Nope.
Don't do that.
I wrote them a strongly worded letter. It didn't help.
Use a Wexler, use a WJ Cog, whatever. They have a list there, Stanford Connect. So there's like 5 of them like that.
It's on our Schoology page too.
Yeah, it's on the Schoology page.
I called PBA and I was about to call back, but do you happen to know on the library if it's okay to use the main one for PBA?
They have that, the list that they have is older than the domain existing. So they're all about the ABC or whatever it's called. So as long as you can get the overall composite on the domain.
All they care about is that composite score.
Yeah.
On the Pearson site, it says, but they say that it is okay. Or,
well, if Pearson says so.
Is it the pupil?
Yeah,
yeah. I should have said, sorry. Don't tell Ashley. But yeah, they said that it's just the ABC, and so the domain thing gives the ABC, so you can use it.
John had his hand.
Back here with the cheat sheets, it's really hard to hear. And so you said something about the SBAC, it's always at the 3rd grade level.
So if you pass the SBAC, like the level 3, not 3rd grade, but level 3, like you've met standard, of 10th grade standard, the colleges use, and they'll use that to cover for classes. They'll say, well, if you've done that, then you could probably do okay.
So I was, I guess my question was, you were talking about having kids prepare for college by taking those tests. And what is that? So those are kids whose goals are that they are going to college, right?
Not always. Sometimes they haven't considered it. The family hasn't thought of going down that road.
So I guess what I'm thinking is lower functioning kids who are at, like, say, the 3rd grade level or struggling to pass the 3rd grade level. You're not suggesting that they wouldn't be taking those tests.
If that student is dead set on being a doctor, which happens a lot, right? And they're operating at a 3rd grade academic level, why do you want to be a doctor? What is it about that? Is it because you want to help people? Do you like the uniform? Do you like hospitals? What is it? Because let's look at how much education it's going to take for somebody to become a doctor. Okay? So it's okay to give those tests if you think that that student can handle what the results are going to tell that student. But if you have a feeling like, uh-oh, pretty fragile ego, may feel really discouraged, and you come up with a different tack. And you really dig deep, why do they want to be a doctor? What is it about that?
Or if you're looking between like 18 to 21 transition program services, bridges, versus like an associate's degree or 2-year community college, and they're kind of in the middle, regardless of where they score, it's nice to know, at least to have that information. Well, this is where you would be placed, and this is what that would look like. You might be successful in a college setting with supports and resources, or maybe you need to continue to transition.
So we had a couple. So this was the first year that Bridges U was put in place as a pilot program, and we had a lot of students come who weren't really ready for college, and they figured that out pretty quickly. So what we did is we put them into work And there's one student, he's like, I'm just done with school. He's West Seattle High School, the Soren. He's like, I'm done with work. I'm good. And so did a really good job at John Stanford in the publishing department as just a volunteer hours. The publishing manager loved him. She has connections with Xerox at the airport, got him a job 40 hours a week, full benefits, opportunity for advancement. Awesome. But Bridges U wasn't a good fit for him. So sometimes it takes that experiential learning for that student to realize whether college is a good fit or not. And now the college doesn't just offer Running Start level 100 classes. They offer adult basic ed, developmental classes, certificate programs. The Georgetown Apprenticeship Center, that is awesome. If we can get students to go there, industry is begging for those students to come. I'm talking like electricians, drywallers, cement people, bricklayers. And the threshold to get into those programs is not always as high as it is down the academic track at a typical community college. So to steer the students and redefine what college really is. College is a spectrum, right? It's post-secondary education. It doesn't always have to be the 4-year stereotype. It's wide, wide open. And these colleges, they want us to come in. And if Jenny Durkin gets her way with this free college thing, that's gonna be awesome. Yeah.
I just wanted to say about the entrance test to the local colleges, the wonder that the time is an enormous element. So the kids who get extra time on that, it's a huge without getting passed. Have you seen that?
Yeah.
Yeah. You guys be curious. Take the wonder link test. So I think there's a link to a real practice version on the Seattle College's website. And if you're like me, walk away
Did you give yourself extra time?
Time on practice test, but I can tell you that it saves kids.
I would imagine it's just like the SAT, like they can't have it if it's just magically added as an accommodation, like 2 days before the test, they have to use it regularly, right?
Yep.
Any other questions? Thank you. High school. So, 7 minutes early. Yes, I win. Where's my Starbucks gift card? Just kidding. So we will convene back here at 1 o'clock when Vaughn will be leading us in our early release training on race and equity. Do you want to say something about the video you want me to play, or do you just want me to?
No,
All
just
right.
have it on in the background.
All right.
Just on repeat.
Over and over.